What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is going to be episode 4 for our Leading for Creativity and Innovation series. Today we're going to talk about transformational leadership. Specifically, we're going to talk about a hidden trap within transformational leadership. Stick around. So like we've already talked about, transformational leaders are very charismatic and they inspire their followers. We talked about that, I think it was episode 2. If you haven't checked that one out, go check it out. I'll link the card up in the top. But as we talked about, they have very strong positive effects on the creativity and innovation of the people that they lead because of their charismatic nature, because of the vision they're able to set forward, and also because of the traits that they possess. And the abilities that they possess to lead people. They have this ability to enhance the creativity. But like I mentioned, there is a trap. There is a potential downside to transformational leadership. And what that is dependency. People can become very dependent on a transformational leader, which in turn will hurt their development and also hurt their creativity and innovation. So before we talk about dependency, we need to talk about what a dependent person is. And I'll read the definition that I stole from the research here real quick. So a dependent person is someone who receives from others a borrowed identity, guidance and direction, compensation for weaknesses, and a lack of knowledge. And most importantly, they receive from others acceptance, approval, and an affirmation of worth. All right, so that is a dependent person. So when I'm talking about a transformational leader creating dependency from their followers, or their followers become dependent on them, that's really what I'm talking about. And the biggest part there is that acceptance, the approval, and the affirmation of worth from the people. Second and last definition before we dive in is something known as projection phenomena. And I'm going to read the definition for that. So basically, it's that leaders can become the recipient of their followers' ideas and desires. So basically, the follower's personal identity becomes attached to the leader. So they're basically projecting themselves, similar to what the dependent person definition said. They can basically try and project their identity and assume the identity or their own self-identity from the leader. So it's basically saying that if that leader ever leaves them, they will lose their own personal identity as well. So a transformational leader can actually increase the dependency of their followers in 5 different ways. We're going to step through each one of those one by one. The first one is a dependency for motivation. Because the transformational leader is so charismatic and they believe so strongly in their vision, and they're so personally motivated towards that vision that it motivates everybody around them, which is a very positive thing. However, over time, that follower can become dependent on the leader for their own personal motivation. They feed off that person's motivation, and again, if that leader's not around or if something changes, that person loses their own sense of personal motivation. The second way that a transformational leader increases this dependency is the dependency of expertise. Typically, your transformational leader is in an area where they're very strong from a knowledge standpoint. They have a lot of technical knowledge, job knowledge, industry knowledge, whatever it may be, and that's what's really propelling them forward, and that's why they were able to create such a compelling vision moving forward. But followers can kind of depend on that leader too much for their knowledge and their expertise instead of developing it for themselves. So that person may seem like they're in an area where they have a high level of expertise, but they actually don't because they're depending so much on the leader. And also their creativity will take a hit because now they're not coming up with new and innovative ideas because their expertise is not actually very strong. They depend so much on the leader for that expertise. The third one is actually very similar to the first, but this is a dependency for engagement. Because the leader, again, got that high spirit, that high motivation, a high level of inspiration, they bring a high level of energy every single day to the job, that feeling can translate to the follower. Again, that can be a very positive thing, but over time that may become a dependent piece of the follower to the leader. The follower doesn't have the ability to engage themselves without the leader around providing that high energy, that high level of engagement. It actually is borrowed from the leader. Fourth way is what I call the daddy effect, or the daddy issue effect. Basically what it is the leader, because of who they are, what they do, they have this high level of engagement and effort, and this person, the follower, looks up to them so much that person almost becomes a parental figure to them, and they start actually seeking out approval from that leader instead of just finding approval from within. Remember that dependent person definition, part of it is they seek approval from others because they're dependent on the approval of others. So this can actually cause self-esteem issues. It can also cause potentially even physiological issues depending on how severe it is. But because this person basically translates a parental figure to their transformational leader, they seek the approval, they crave the approval from their leader in order for them to do any good work. And if for some reason the leader, doesn't give them the exact approval that they need, that can have a very diminishing effect on their own self-esteem and also just their creativity, their ability to stay engaged, their own motivation, everything else we've talked about. All right, the fifth and last way that a transformational leader increases the dependency and effectively decreases the creativity of their team is something called the halo effect. Again, because this leader has very good technical knowledge, job knowledge, industry knowledge, whatever it may be, and they're very charismatic, very energetic, and believe in their vision so much that it creates this halo effect. And what ends up happening is that the followers no longer critically analyze any of the leader's ideas. So anytime the leader presents something as good, nobody questions it. Right? And that is the anti-creativity. Right? You need to be able to challenge each other's ideas, say which ones are good, take the pieces of an idea maybe that are good and move them or transform them into different ideas. That is what is critical in the creativity and innovation process. However, if the leader is coming up with ideas and nobody is critically thinking through it and just an uncritical acceptance of the idea, that is going to, one, decrease the creativity and innovation of the team, each individual, but also starts to make the followers feel like they never have any good ideas because the leader is the only one who comes up with good ideas. All right, so again, what can you do? All right, that's how I kind of like to end all these videos is what can you do? And this one all comes down to self-awareness. Like I mentioned as we were going through this, within the motivation and the influence and the inspiration, these are all good things. They can have very, very positive effects. But you as the leader have to be very self-aware of what's happening around you and understand when you're crossing that threshold of am I providing the right motivation and inspiration to everybody, and at what point do people just start to depend on me? So you just have to kind of sit back and watch sometimes, observe what your environment, observe how your people interact with you, how do they interact with each other, how do they interact when you're not there. These are all very, very critical observations for you to be able to have and analyze to get a good idea of, are you becoming the dependent transformational leader or just a good transformational leader? Make sure you keep on studying leadership, understand the effects that all different types of leadership have, understand the effects that you have on others. Like I said, self-awareness and self-analyze is very critical for all leaders, but especially within the transformational leadership. Next piece of advice is check your ego. Really think about, why are you leading? Are you leading for yourself or are you leading for others? If you're leading for yourself, it's because you enjoy the power, you enjoy the authority, you enjoy the perks, which are all nice. I'm not saying that you shouldn't necessarily enjoy those, but if that's the primary motivator for you to take on leadership roles, then you're probably not leading for the right reasons, and you're probably going to have a detrimental effect in the short term, but most likely, or definitely in the long term, but maybe in the short term, on your people, on your organization. You're just going to end up hurting them in the long run if you're not leading for the right reasons. Make sure that you're leading to help your people succeed. This is why humility is so important for leaders. If you followed S.H.I.E.L.D. For any amount of time, you know that we teach the ARCH acronym, which is approachability, credibility, respect, and humility being a huge piece of that. And this is one of the reasons why humility is so important. You have to be able to put yourself on the sidelines sometimes and make sure that you're not looking out for your own interests, and make sure that you're putting everybody else in front of you. That doesn't mean that you can't be successful or you shouldn't be successful, but make sure you understand why you're leading, who you're leading for. Are you leading for you or for everybody else? And if you're able to do that ego check and stay humble, you should be able to avoid this hidden trap of transformational leadership. The last piece of advice is to empower. And we hear this term, it's kind of a buzzword in the last couple years, but it's a good buzzword in my opinion. Now you can go too far sometimes. You can over empower people. Maybe I'll talk about that in future videos. But that is less of a risk at this point in my mind, because so many people, completely under empower their people, that I would almost rather see you over empower people and then scale that back than never empower anybody. So that's just my opinion, but we can maybe talk more about that in future videos. But big picture, don't allow yourself to become a crutch. That's something I've said to many people that I've led, people that I've taught leadership to, mentored, and coached. I've even told them, I'm never gonna allow myself to become your crutch. Because as soon as I do that, now you're dependent on me, and it all stems from this idea that I don't want you to be dependent on me. I want you to be able to approve yourself and accept yourself and see your own self-worth. As soon as you need me to do that for you, I've become a very ineffective leader. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're approaching those that you lead, is that you do not want to become their crutch. That doesn't mean you don't help people. Obviously you want to help people, but don't become the crutch that they lean on over time, because it's just going to be hurtful to them and for you. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 4 and also our discussion on transformational leadership. Next episode, we're going to move back to a term we talked about in episode 2, which is psychological safety, which is an extremely interesting topic. It's actually something I've learned about relatively recently, within the last probably 8 months or so, but it has a lot of power for you as a leader. So we're going to dive into that next episode. So we'll see you then. Take care.